The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
Three designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Trevor Muller-Hagel.
I'm Ananda Gunaratna.
And I'm Charlie McCarran.
And this is the first episode in our series on numerical coordination. So what that means is basically you are working together to put things in a specific order. Normally based on numbers, which was what we did all of our games for this series are based on numbers. And the first game we're kicking off with is none other than The Game. The Game is a game of, I think, 2 to 4 players. Pretty low player count for kind of more of a lighter game, but effectively, you are given 4 stacks of cards. 2 are going up, 2 are going down. The ones that are going up start with 1. The ones going down start with 100. And all of the other cards are 2 through 99. So you're working together with your other teammates to basically play every card in the deck over the course of the game. Every turn, you play 2 cards until you run out of cards, or you play at least 2 cards. You can play more if you are able to play more in an easy way. But the entire time, you cannot tell the other players what you have in your hand, and you only play 1 card at a time, so people can kind of interject and say, hey, can you not play there? I have a good card for that. The only twist that I forgot when I played this before is that you can play a card that is 10 away from the most recent card played, and it can be going the opposite direction. So if you're going down, you can play a card that's higher by 10 exactly. That helps you kind of reset the stack a little bit. But other than that, it's a pretty simple game. What are you guys' thoughts on it?
Well, I think that jump of exactly 10 makes a huge difference. Like, it feels really good to make that jump because, of course, as you go through a pile, like as you go from 100 down or from 1 up, the further you get, the harder it is to play cards. And being able to jump backwards like that feels good because it's opening up more space to play more cards.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it also enables combos because, like, you can save up a bunch of cards in your hand, and you only need a couple of cards to enable the combo, right? You only need a couple of cards that are exactly 10 away from each other, and then you sort of jump down, and then you jump back up, and then you play more cards down, and then you jump up. I played my whole hand, and it felt great because I only went down from, I think, like a 96 to an 84, but I got rid of a ton of cards.
Yeah. Those combos feel really good. And it's such a simple game. Like, you don't expect to have that kind of interesting gameplay going on.
Yeah.
But it's actually really interesting. And then working together and figuring out, like, hey, I need to play here, so we need to destroy another stack or whatever you're, like, communicating about. You just can't talk about the solid numbers. Like, hey, I have a 52. Can you not play on the 54? Because I need to play my 52.
Yeah.
It's very flexible in how you can communicate. But it's that limit is really nice.
Yeah. And you said that previously you played this without that rule.
Yeah, without the jump back 10. Yep.
And how did it feel in comparison? Because I'm guessing...
Yeah, that was the first time I
really
played
tough.
with you.
Yeah, we played at the Game Center the other day. Yeah.
Much harder. This game, with that rule, we ended up with only 1 card that we didn't play.
Yeah.
We probably had like over 20 cards.
Yeah, but we almost ran out the stack.
Did we?
Or the deck, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We got really close to just jumping down to 1 card.
Yeah.
And we only had 3 players, too, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
So, yeah, I think we did pretty good. But we didn't have those feel-good moments, and I think having those breaks in there would have eased the tension a lot. And I think that would have been a much nicer experience.
Right. Yeah, like playing 1 card close to another one feels pretty good.
Yeah.
But playing a card that's higher or in the other direction as, the direction
resetting
you're going. That
Yeah.
feels really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think all 3 games we picked for this series have moments that are like you're trying to mind meld with the people around you. That's the fun part for me.
Oh, yeah.
Is figuring out, and what clues to give without, this one has a little bit of fuzzy rules around, like,
communication.
You just can't say, like, what numbers are in your hand, obviously, but you can kind of say, like, ooh, I'm pretty close to that, and you kind of have to determine what you think the other player means by
right.
I'm close to that.
Right.
So I think it was, it's fun playing with you, Trevor, because you're good. We're good at like setting the tone of what we could communicate.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I have played this game quite a bit. When I first played it, I immediately went out and bought it. I was just so excited about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's such a funny little, quick, easy game. But it's actually very difficult to really, and it's not so difficult to complete the game, but it is hard to get it perfect. It is hard to get that last card in there perfectly, unless you've kind of planned for it all along. I was really impressed during our play just now. We kept one stack from even getting like a couple cards on it. It was in the 90s and it was going down for most of the game. And I was pretty impressed with that because normally all those decks halfway through are in trouble. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we did a good job managing that. We just ended up in a tough spot with my 36.
Mm-hmm.
I also like that it gives you a fair bit of freedom on your turn in the sense that you're required to play 2 cards, but you can play more if you want to.
Flexibility.
Yeah, which is, of course, limited by other players who might want to play their own cards.
Oh, if I just play this, it'll be great for me. It's like, well, it's great for all of us.
It turned into almost like a push your luck game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how far do I want to keep going on this?
Okay, stop there.
Yeah,
okay.
Stop.
Okay.
And we're all sharing the same deck of cards that we're trying to run through.
Right.
So, pushing your luck doesn't help that much. But sometimes you have a really cool move you want to do, or you have a card that seems like it would go well with the others, and you're not sure if there will still be a place for it by your next turn. Mm-hmm. So it's nice that it gives you the flexibility to do that, because obviously the other games we played, without talking too much about them right now, I feel like don't give you as much flexibility.
Oh, sure, with the gameplay itself.
Yeah,
they're pretty rigid.
Yeah, but yet I think this game feels like skyrockets a little bit. We talked about that in a previous episode. In the fact that we have to take turns in order really made a difference, because like we'd have to plan for someone to say, no, we really have to save this pile for Ananda's turn. So what do I do in the meantime? And being forced to play something is what makes this game funny.
Well,
eventually you're going to screw up.
And I realized I made a mistake in that I had, I think, almost like a run of 4 that no one else had an interest in that pile at the moment. And I was like, oh man, I can just play all 4 of these at once. But as soon as I did, the next turn, I had to destroy a pile, because I didn't hold on to 2 of those cards and make it so I could play again easily. And so it was just interesting, like, how that kind of is push your luck. But, like, you're pushing the group's luck. It's not just your own. And so you're kind of having to manage, like, when you draw, when you play cards, when you actually, like, can go further, should you? Mm-hmm. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Mm-hmm. Today's lesson.
One thing that we did get wrong when we played was we were splaying the cards out.
Oh, sure.
Where, in fact, you're supposed to just have... the piles are not supposed to be splayed. You're not supposed to see what card is under the top card of each pile, which I think is probably a good idea, because I know there were many times when I thought, if I wanted to, I could look at all these numbers and probably figure out what's safe to play.
Yeah, but at least probabilistically, like what's going to be better. Yeah.
Well, because there's only one of each number in the deck,
right.
So I can figure out, like, is it possible that there might be one of the 10 gaps? Does this other card exist? Do I need to worry about someone having it? I could have calculated that. I didn't want to do so I didn't do that, because that would be too much work.
It'd been a lot of work for very little gain.
Yeah, I'm sure we've probably said this on another game, but it's when you have an overwhelming amount of information like that, you want to hide it.
Yeah.
Because theoretically someone could still remember it, but that's much better than having it technically all available right there for you to see.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I don't like counting cards in games, but I actually did sort of enjoy, like, just getting a gut reaction to, because each suit has, or each set of 10 has kind of a different suit color
Yeah, an
on
art
it,
style.
which is a good choice. But you could kind of look around and see like, ooh, there's like all the teens are taken up, or
I do wonder if the original intent with that is so that you could communicate with the other players that you have a card that has bubbles on it without telling them that you have a 50 card or like a 54. Like,
Sure,
say,
to
no, I have a
give
card
a
with
little-
bubbles on it.
yeah.
Like, oh, bubbles. Oh, okay. Like, just to like play with that communication a little bit.
yeah,
Seems a little against the spirit.
Well, that's what I did. I think in my first couple plays of the game, I would do that. The real thing is that you're just not supposed to communicate exact figures. You can normally say like, I used to say families, like I'm going up a couple families to give like decades or tens, groups of tens.
Decades. That's a good term.
Yeah, just to give like some idea like how far you're going. But like, and it's just very interesting how you kind of develop this own language, like jumps and hops. I used to say skips if it's just like a couple numbers at a time. For like, and so there's like a lot of different like linguistic things you can play with.
yeah.
That aren't exact numbers and aren't exact figures, and then you kind of create this thing together, which I think is a lot of fun.
Yeah, the meta
Yeah.
of it,
Yep.
figuring out how we
we
each
talk.
think and talk
Yep.
to each other, which is cool coming from a game that's just numbers.
Just
numbers on cards.
2 through 99 with 2 100s and 2 1s.
It's pretty forgiving. So because you have 4 piles, the other games that we're going to talk about are not as forgiving.
No.
But I did really like that, even if you have to jump up on one pile, you still have 3 other piles.
Right.
So, it's not necessarily the end of the world.
Until it is. Still
Yeah.
bummed about the 36.
But
Yeah, I think the 4 piles are my takeaway, because I would venture to guess maybe they started with just a pile going up and a pile going down from 100.
This is playtest.
Yeah, and I like the fact that we could have different piles to talk about too,
yeah.
and say like, no, please save that pile for me, and yeah, I don't know, that it's just a fun, like, yeah,
You're able
having-
to ask for that restriction in the group because there are other places for them to play. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of gives you a little bit more negotiating power or like ability to kind of not manipulate the game, but kind of persuade it in your favor a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, there's space for everyone.
Yeah.
I think my takeaway goes back to the 10
Yeah.
jump, because in these numerical coordination games, just based on the ones we've seen, they're often games about not making a mistake. Right, like you need to get the things in the right order.
Right.
With very limited communication. And if you make a mistake, that's very bad. So the best that you can hope for normally is that things will go right. But having the 10 gap is things are not just going right, they're going better than right. They're in fact, they're going in the opposite direction of wrong.
I always
It's
refer
like
to it as
you-
healing.
Healing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
because we deal constant damage to these decks.
Yeah.
It gives you a moment to like heal the deck. It's like, oh yes, that's power.
Right. Yeah, so having a way, so in a game in a genre that's about sort of really very limited gains, just not having things go wrong, having something go better than right feels really good.
Well, we were just talking about customer service and that study about.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember why it came up, but
Yeah,
you were mentioning people actually have a better customer service experience if there was a problem and then it got fixed by someone.
that's true.
What was we were talking about that because of a prototype, right? Where it was like,
Yeah, I don't remember the context for that conversation, but that is a really great connection because, yes, so studies have shown that for customer service, people are happier if something goes wrong, but then the customer service team goes above and beyond to fix it, they are happier in that case than if nothing went wrong at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do see the parallel here.
Well, I'm going to draw another parallel in that same line back to our deck builder series, where getting rid of something negative feels almost better than getting something positive. You know, like where you're actually able to like remove this bad thing from happening. It feels really good to just take away for that badness.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And like that, I think that even translates to this, which I didn't even think about until you were talking about the tens. So, and customer service. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. What was it? Were we talking about the peak end rule? Was that?
Yeah.
That was the.
I think so. You should explain that.
So the peak end rule is basically for any given experience, people tend to remember both the highest or lowest point of the experience. So like if it's a bad experience, the worst part of it, or if it's a good experience, the best part of it. And they remember the end. And those tend to be the two things that they mostly take away from it. So in game design and, well, the customer service application is if you have a small negative experience, but then you follow it up with a really big positive experience, which is where you get the great customer service, that's more memorable than if there's no bumps at all in the road. And in game design, the application there is, I mean, you know, games are obviously built up from experiences. If players have a small negative experience, but then you can turn it into a positive one. So like to give you an example, in Imperial Settlers, there is a mechanic called raising, where you can go and destroy one of your opponent's buildings to get some resources. But when you do so, their building, two things happen. Their building turns into a foundation, and they gain one wood resource. Now, what I mean by foundation is it's like a building, but it doesn't do anything. And why it's relevant is because you can get your better faction-specific buildings out on the board by sacrificing a building you own. Now, if you have a foundation, you can sacrifice a foundation, which feels awesome because it was just sitting there uselessly. But if you don't have a foundation, then you have to get rid of one of your
beneficial buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you're not really any better off for having a foundation because if it had been a building, you still could have sacrificed it. But you feel really good because you're getting rid of something useless instead of having to, you know, face the painful decision of what good building to get rid of. So
For sure.
That's sort of the application of the peak end rule in game design, which is basically just if something bad happens to someone, give them an opportunity to make something really good happen as a result of that.
And you don't want it to be a valley that's the big peak of the game. You don't want a big negative experience that you can't recover from. You want it to be a small negative, big game.
Yeah. You follow a small negative with a big positive so that when
you
they
cross the river, go up the mountain.
Yeah, so in their memory, they don't remember, I guess, the river in this. So the river is the bad thing?
Yeah, because it goes down. It
like
cuts
the
a groove. And then, well, it's, you know,
whatever.
I think,
a cross section.
Yeah.
No, I've thought about this before too, in that I think when I do have like a player attacks another player or something, I've always thought like I want that player who gets attacked to feel like they can plan a counterattack right away. I think that's like the key. If you feel like, for one, you have hope that you can come back, and two, it creates a new puzzle for you to solve rather than just like I don't know, I ran out of health or something.
Sure.
But like, so yeah, if there is an attack, how can you make that player feel like they can be clever to come back from it? Like that raising example. Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring up Dominion briefly.
Yeah.
Because I was talking.
We're
about
already on
this.
this.
We're on
way
tangent
away
number
from
X.
numbers.
I'll get back to my takeaway, I promise. But curses in Dominion. I never like getting curses in Dominion. I don't like having them in the game.
Yeah, they're awful.
They're awful. But
They're so
if
funny.
you could trade in 3 curses for a beneficial effect, then I might try to get curses just to have it sync up in my hand, so I have 3 of them, so I can do this thing with them.
So
Shoot the moon.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hearts.
I have something a
Yeah.
little bit like that in my game Sprocket Forge.
Oh yeah.
Because one of the things in the game is so there's a mechanic called favors where you can get favors which are worth victory points, but you draw the favors at random, and they're worth between 1 and 3 victory points.
Sure.
So if you draw, so like if you draw a 3, that's great, right? You got 3 points. If you draw a 1, you can feel disappointed, maybe. Most of the deck is 1, so that's most of what you're going to get. But I have a second mechanic, which is that you can spend favors to petition noble houses, but it doesn't matter how valuable the favor is. A 1 gets you the same thing as a 3, which means if you get a bunch of 1s, you can go and trade them in for petitions, and then you feel really good because you've turned this thing that you're kind of disappointed about getting into, I was really clever, and now I've turned it into something useful.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly.
When life hands you lemons.
Yeah.
Theory.
Yeah.
You make a lemon grove.
Yeah. But yeah, I think in general, that's a great thing to do. In the context of the game, I mean,
bringing it back. That's
yes.
I was going to too, so thank you.
It's hard to say that it's exactly the same thing because generally if you can play a card on one side to lower something, you could probably play it on the other side. Although on the other hand, actually no. Now that I think about it, the cards you do this with tend to be sort of in the middle-ish, or they could be toward the edges. But you're every card that you play is kind of a liability.
Yeah.
Unless it's really close to another card. So like every card is kind of a valley or a river, I guess, if rivers are bad.
Negative mountains.
Right. And it's just a question of how deep it is. But
Yeah.
then when you get the 10 in the other direction, that is a mountain that outweighs...
Or it's a bridge.
Okay, sure. I'm
Sorry, I'm going too far with this.
I don't know where we are in this metaphor. but the point is, all playing cards makes you feel very slightly bad, but then playing the cards that go the other direction makes you feel really, really good.
And then if you just healed it one step and then the next person goes and they play the next step up, that feels like you're on cloud 9. And you didn't even know that person had that card. It's normally just luck, but if you can make it kick off, it's really fun to have it restore 10, 20, 30 points up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is great. We've got this now. But I'm going to go back to my takeaway before we get sidetracked again from the game. I really, really, really appreciate the specific limitation of communication. And it's going to be probably an ongoing thing for me in these different games. But I love just the soft rules around how you can communicate and how that kind of leaves it open for interpretation a little bit. But really at the core, you just can't say what numbers you have in your hand. And when you're coordinating with other people, you can say, I kind of have this, I have this. It almost makes a negotiation. And you're looking at these different decks and seeing well, can I play here? No, I need to play there too. It's well, I need to play some. You have to go back and forth, figure out what's the best play for the group, but you have no idea what everyone has. And I think that little limit is what makes the game work ultimately. And I love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm excited for more of these numerical coordination games. This new genre we just coined.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yep. So yeah, tune in next time and we'll play The Mind.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.